Hello YouTube! In case it's not obvious, I'm starting a book review channel, and I spotted that someone else is doing the same thing. Eli Rod S, I hope I pronounced that correctly. She started her channel round about the same time as me and launched with a series of questions to introduce herself, which seemed like a really good idea. And then YouTube recommended another video by somebody called Library Says doing something similar, and she's a great tip on what to do with your hands to stop yourself looking awkward. So I thought, that's a great idea. I'm going to answer the same questions, but full credit goes to whoever wrote these questions, and certainly check out the channels I mentioned because they did some cracking responses. Why did I decide to do this? That's a great question, actually. I'm wondering myself. No, the reason I've decided to finally do this, I've got a few friends who have tried to talk me into doing this for a few years, actually. And I kept saying, no, I'm going to just make a complete fool of myself. And they said, Simon, you always make a fool of yourself. We're not your friends because we like you. We're your friends because we enjoy laughing at you with refreshing honesty. And so I said, okay, maybe one day. Also, in case you missed the memo, we've got a bit of a global pandemic going on at the minute, and I've actually been quite inspired by the number of people who have been using their skills to bring a smile to folk in these times, musicians and actors doing their bit. So I thought, well, let's step out the comfort zone and give it a go. The worst that can happen is everybody hates me. Certainly I'm not going to sing for you on YouTube. If I decided to sing, it would not bring anybody comfort at all. But what I do like is books. So here I am talking about books. Absolutely nothing, no. Come with very low expectations and you'll only be moderately disappointed. I mean, Scottish people were not known for really getting excited about anything, to be honest. But I do enjoy talking to people who've read the same books as me and finding out what their opinions are. So I guess if I'm excited for anything, it's that, to read the comments and engage in some discussions and debates and find out what other people's opinions are. I love reading because I find people fascinating. I find psychology fascinating, and reading is an opportunity to meet all sorts of people, all sorts of characters, see how they cope in different situations, see how they interact with each other, and it's just a fabulous way to have adventures and really, it's a ticket to new worlds. It's also, quite frankly, a brilliant way to be very adventurous and very lazy at the same time, because it allows you to go on all of these fabulous adventures, visit these wonderful places, meet all of these incredibly inspirational folk at home with a cup of tea. Credit has to go to my dad. He read to me every night before I went to sleep, and was vividly remember reading the Chronicles of Narnia. I really enjoyed those, and we'd have a cliffhanger with every chapter ending. I also recall him reading to me the Paddington Bear books, and so it was from there that I really got into reading. And as I got older, instead of him reading to me at night, I would read for myself at night, and it carried on from there. I would ask you, other people who sit and talk to their own face about books of an evening, whether you watch other reviewers' reviews of the book that you're about to review before you review it, or do you prefer to give your opinion completely uninfluenced by what other people have said? I guess it will be not being repetitive. Not being repetitive. The first book I remember reading independently was Hacker by Mallory Blackman. It's a great wee espionage thriller for the under 10, and yes, I did buy them again as an adult. I reread it too. I still think it's a great wee book for the under 10 and for the over 30 in fact. It is a bit dated now, to be honest. It's a bit like an uncle who's not really 21st century appropriate, but nevertheless you let him hang around for the old times. But if you recognise Mallory Blackman, she's a prolific children's writer and a very well respected one. She was the Children's Laureate for a few years, and viewers in the UK might recognise her Noughts and Crosses series of books because they were adapted by the BBC earlier this year and made into quite a good TV drama actually. But this was the first book that I remember ever making me cry. So Mallory Blackman is a writer that I would highly recommend. Anyway, I read quite a lot on the train on the way to the office and home again. I read even more waiting on the delayed train because that's generally a significantly longer period of time than the journey itself. I read in bed, I read in the bath, and when my wife's at work and I'm home alone, this armchair is my preferred reading chair. So I will read anywhere provided there is time in which to read. My appetite is quite varied and strange, I guess. I read quite a bizarre mix of books. I'll show you a couple that kind of illustrate the sort of things that I like to read. I'm a huge Agatha Christie fan. I've been reading Agatha Christie at least one book a year every year for the last 20 years. This geeky fact is that this is the 20th anniversary of me reading my first Agatha Christie, Murder on the Orient Express, and I still like to read her books at least one a year, usually around Christmas time. And I do like a lot of detective fiction and modern police procedural stuff. Ian Rankin, Michael Connelly, Stuart McBride, those sort of books I really enjoy. I love thrillers. I'm a huge thriller fan, and I particularly like urban noir and the thrillers that are all to do with the psychology of people. So I would have to say that one of the best ever is Gone Girl, and I know that everybody says that and it's not a hugely original opinion, but I stand by it. Gone Girl is one of the best books I've ever read. I cannot recommend it highly enough. My wife is called Amy, and I refer to her as Amazing Amy, which she thought was a huge compliment until I finally gave her this to read, and then she was not so impressed. I do like a fantasy now and again, just before I become too cynical with the world, and if you're going to choose any fantasy, the perennial Harry Potter books have to be those. I know, I'm becoming more and more of a cliche as the video goes on, but I also want to tell you about this, the House of Leaves book by Mark Z. Danielowski, which is a phenomenal piece of work, a bit of a cult following, so if you've not heard of it, don't worry, a lot of people haven't. But what I really like about Danielowski is the fact that he pushes the envelope of what a book is and what a book does. I'm not sure how easily you'll see this on this screen, but he experiments with all different types of layouts and all different experiences in the book, and he has multiple narrators with different fonts. There's even a version of this that includes Braille, and it's just really fascinating because it's a completely different experience to what you would be used to ordinarily reading a book. And generally I am quite interested by books that do something very different. If it's unusual, I am very likely to be drawn to it. I don't read a lot of non-fiction, but I do enjoy political memoirs. I read quite a lot of those. I find them really interesting to get into the minds of the people making massive decisions for the country, and I enjoy reading them irrespective of whether I agree with their politics or particularly like them as people. So I've read all of the recent UK Prime Ministers. So we've got Tony Blair, his was really quite well written. Gordon Brown was dry, but still quite interesting. David Cameron, quite a few zingers from DC actually, to be honest. Quite bitchy when he wants to be in there. And Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond, his book came out reflecting on the independence referendum, and to be honest, I found it as a book disappointing because he didn't give a lot of analysis into why his campaign failed. He just spoke a lot about who he played golf with. Therein could be the answer, who knows. I've also read George W. Bush, I've got Hillary Clinton's. I quite like reading all of these sorts of political biographies as well. And that concludes the Q&A section of the video, so I hope you enjoyed that. I will try my very best to come up with some things that are interesting to watch, and I'll try not to ramble on too much, but in the meantime, why don't you answer one of those questions? Choose a question that you like, chuck the answer into the comments box and introduce yourself to me. I'd like to meet you. Otherwise, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my awesome videos, and I hope to see you on the next review very soon. Bon voyage!